So tell us your name and give us your background, please.
I'm Dr. Jerry Curatola. I am a biologic dentist in New York City, and I have spent a good part of my professional career exploring biocompatible dentistry while doing a lot of comprehensive restorative care.
And your background, what got you to become a biologic dentist?
I graduated dental school in 1983, and around that time, I felt very prepared to treat the symptoms of dental disease, but I was very intrigued by the causes. And so I didn't want to just be a drill 'em, fill 'em, and bill 'em guy. So I explored alternative medicine. And I explored, actually, it was the very first program in New York City, and it was a chiropractor that created this certificate program, Dr. Alan Pressman, and it was holistic health. It was a master's program in holistic health being given in evenings at the Pratt Institute of New York. And my wife was like, you just graduated dental school. We're in hock up to our ears here. What are you doing? And I said, there's more out there that we don't know about. And I'm so glad, because it set me on a path to Harvard Medical School's programs in complementary and alternative medicine in the 1990s. The symposiums given by Dr. David Eisenberg, and then other programs. And, I feel that the consciousness of doctors now to look at a more biologic and biocompatible manner and looking at toxicity as such a major source of disease is something that is rising much more than back then in 1983.
Now, there's some point in time where you started to look at fluoride as, everybody look at fluoride in the public water supplies. Fluoride is, what's going to help give kids less cavities and better dental health. What got you to look at that issue differently?
That's a great question, because fluoride is one of these, it was a sacred cow in preventative dentistry. Like when I was in dental school and we studied how fluoride works, we were like, wow, you introduce fluoride and it knocks out the hydroxy element. Our teeth and bones have made a hydroxyapatite, and it makes something called fluorapatite. And we thought that was stronger. But now we've recognized that, first of all, fluoride is a toxic element. It's the most highly reactive, non-radioactive element in the periodic table. So it is very negatively charged. So yes, indeed, when you introduce fluoride into the body, it converts hydroxyapatite, what our teeth and bones are made of, to fluorapatite. And it's a very hard mineral. We never looked really at the physical properties. And I saw some engineering papers and scientific papers that evaluated tensile strength of natural teeth and bones and fluoridated teeth and bones. And fluoridated teeth and bones were 40% more brittle. So it makes something very hard, but very brittle, kind of like a porcelain cup. So my mother, after 20 years of fluoridation, when she tripped on the stairs in our home, didn't have a bruise on her hip. She had a fractured hip. And what's interesting is in the 1980s, the orthopedist started looking at 30 years of fluoridation, and they thought they would be seeing a decrease in bone fractures and things like that, and there was an exponential increase that correlated to fluoridation in hip fracture rates. And those studies were published in the New England Journal of Medicine, Journal of the American Medical Association. So I started to look at this and saying, wait a minute, this drinking fluoridated water, first of all, it doesn't even address where most decay forms, which is in the pits and grooves of teeth. It works on smooth surfaces and converts that, like I said, to fluorapatite. And then I started looking at, what does this do to the rest of the body? And we started to see cancer, decreased IQ, lowered IQ. There's more than 40 studies now. It was 20, it's now 40. And Harvard University did a meta-analysis of those studies and found that, yes, fluoride lowers IQ in children. And it disproportionately affects blacks more than whites. So there's racial disparity there in terms of the use of fluoride. But so many other things that now really frighten me. It actually frightens me, because we, in the Center for Disease Control, in 2006 released a study of fluorosis, which the orthodox dental world likes to say, well, fluorosis is a cosmetic defect. It's just white spots and brown spots, and that's just not true. Fluorosis makes teeth more prone to decay, the very thing we give children fluoride to supposedly prevent. The fluorosis rates in 2006 were 4 out of 10 children in America, 41%, had fluorosis. Boston University this past spring, released a study. It's now approaching 59%. Almost 60% of children, adolescent children, are having evidence of fluorosis damage. Here's the really frightening part of that as well. Decay rates are rising at that like we've never seen before. Untreated decay is up like this. We have decay in some fluoridated communities higher than non-fluoridated. So from a public health, it was going to be the panacea for all dental decay, has now become the pariah.
Is fluoride generically all the same, or are the different forms of it? How should we be understanding fluoride?
That's a great question, because most people don't know the truth about that. And here's the truth. We put sodium fluoride in toothpaste, and we have, and by the way, the sources that people are exposed to fluoride is all over. So people could be giving their children bottled water, but yet they're going to restaurants where food is being prepared with fluoridated water. So they're getting fluoride in a lot of different places, which is why we have an epidemic, a rampant epidemic of fluorosis. And fluorosis is not a simple cosmetic defect. It is a sign of a serious overexposure to this toxic element. The types of fluoride that we put in our water would really frighten just about anybody. It's hydrofluorosilicic acid generally. It is a waste product. This is a waste product that has a fluoride element in it, but hydrofluorosilicic acid is highly corrosive, highly toxic. They have to wear hazmat suits to dump it into the fresh water supply. So we're dumping a hazardous waste product into the water under the guise of preventative dentistry. Whereas it's clear fluoride doesn't work. It is not the answer to dental decay. And the type of fluoride that's being added into the water, hydrofluorosilicic acid, is so toxic that, but it's a byproduct, it's a waste product of the phosphate fertilizer industry. Can you say Monsanto?
I was just about to ask, so who supplies this and who's profiting from it? Because,
New York City buys this toxic waste product for $12 million.
Just one city?
Just one city. So they are selling toxic waste under the guise of water fluoridation, and it just gets me so angry. But there's 3 main sources of hydrofluorosilicic acid. It's a toxic waste product from the phosphate fertilizer industry. It is a toxic waste product from aluminum manufacture. Can you say Alcoa? And it is a toxic waste product from uranium enrichment. Very interesting. Lots of fluoride produced from uranium enrichment. That's under the domain of the US military. So we have some very powerful groups that have found a very convenient way of eliminating a toxic waste product that should not be anywhere in our water. I was talking about lowering IQ in children. That's only the tip of the iceberg. Harvard University, 2006, had a study on the direct correlation of osteosarcoma in male children, and which is fatal bone cancer. Fatal bone cancer and fluoridated water.
Wow.
As a matter of fact, it was such a eerily high statistical correlation. And I found it interesting because I was like, well, why male children, not female children? Female children? Well, male children have to do with the activity of the growth endings of the bone, and how sensitive those areas are to toxic bombardment. But osteosarcoma is generally a fatal bone cancer.
Yeah, it's nasty stuff.
Yes.
So this is a known toxic waste product. They have to have some premise as to, well, the toxic part gets filtered out in the water when it's going through its refining
Well, they say,
process.
it used to be, well, 1 part per million is okay.
Right.
So we dilute the poison so much that you're going to get fluoride, which is good for you. And you know what? I am sitting here as a biologic dentist right now, and it is being taught in every dental school. It is bombarded. I mean, it is almost, I compare it to brainwashing the dental community to believe that, you're crazy to think that fluoride's not good. Fluoride's the best thing since sliced bread. And it is a lie. It's a lie, because this toxic waste product, we look at the rates of disease and all of the problems that are associated with exposure to fluoride. It becomes, just like mercury. I mean, you've done a fantastic program on vaccines. We look at dental mercury. We look at all these different toxicities, and then we wonder why cancer is at a rate that no one would have fathomed back even 50 years ago.
So this gets very interesting, because you're talking about being able to see fluoride toxicity in the teeth. Are there systemic effects? I mean, because the things you can visualize are one thing. You are discussing IQ, which would be kind of a systemic effect.
I mean, I could stay here with you right now and just continue to rattle them off. One of the biggest problems with fluoride is it's an endocrine disruptor, and it's been linked to hypothyroidism. Wow. That's a study that came out of Manchester, England, University of Manchester in the UK. Fluoride, and here we have hypothyroidism is epidemic as well. We have an epidemic of hypothyroidism, which is very commonly correlated to the epidemic of obesity.
Right.
So we have, so many people that are sick, and we need to take a serious look at what we're doing. And I just thank you for doing a program like this, because the word needs to get out there that I'm not sitting here. I'm a clinical adjunct professor at New York University College of Dentistry. I've written papers. I've been an oral health expert to large numbers of media organizations and bodies. I am not a wacko.
So there seem to be some ominous parallels here. We're looking at a toxic substance that's being broadly distributed into the water supply. Maybe the only thing more important than the food supply is the water supply.
Exactly.
Right? And the fact that there are large corporate interests that are profiting from this and have extraordinary lobbying leverage that can drive academia, that could drive political processes, et cetera. And what's startling to me, because I had never heard this before until you just presented it, is that, for example, Monsanto profits from this. We look at GMOs, we look at glyphosate, Roundup, et cetera, and you see that whole connection and the malfeasance. We've talked about the pharmaceutical industry and the vaccines and kind of how people are blinded or literally taught to think a certain way, almost like an orthodoxy. And now we're seeing it, and I never knew this before you said it, we're seeing it in dental schools that fluoride becomes an orthodoxy that if anybody questions it, they must be some kind of a whack job.
Exactly.
But instead, you're looking, but simultaneously, there's peer-reviewed literature saying we're seeing very scary correlations here.
So you know what their answer is?
Yeah.
Oh, they're just getting too much. Like they need less arsenic.
But you're putting it in their water. I mean,
You want to hear another scary fact?
Yeah.
Flint, Michigan became this big thing,
right?
So Flint, Michigan, you had all this high lead. Hydrofluorosilicic acid is so corrosive that in old buildings that still have lead pipes, it leaches lead out of the pipes, raising the levels of lead in the water supply.
Oh, so it amplifies lead.
It amplifies lead.
So it can take lead that was maybe not at what are considered toxic levels. I think any level's toxic, but whatever that data, but it can take it and push it past a threshold.
Exactly. They just did in New York City. They had more than half of the water fountains in the inner city schools had unsafe levels of lead. Okay, that story was on the cover of the New York Post. and it just disappeared. And what's interesting is, not to sound, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I mean this. I'm a good citizen, and I'm really struck by the fact that recently I have been looking for pictures of fluoridated bone, because a lot of people think they talk about fluorosis as being a cosmetic defect on the teeth, but it's good for your teeth, but that's just a cosmetic defect. And now we have something 58-59% of kids with these cosmetic defects. And I was looking for a picture of fluoridated bone, and someone sent me this picture, and it was stored in their computer, but the source of the picture of the fluoridated bone was no longer available from a medical study about skeletal fluorosis. Skeletal fluorosis is a scarier thing because the entire skeletal system is affected, not just the teeth. And the bone looks you look at a healthy bone and you look at a fluoridated bone, and the fluoridated bone just looks diseased. It has these brown spots and all that. So there's very uneven calcification of the bone. And then we know it definitely affects growth endings and things like that. But the other part of this whole fluoride story, which is equally interesting, is that you have studies that have actually shown that drinking fluoridated water doesn't stop cavities. And I find the paradoxical study that showed that there were actually fluoridated communities with higher rates of decay than non-fluoridated. That we know now that we should put the efforts, rather than putting this toxic waste product into the water, we should put these efforts into diet and nutrition, which I have to say, I think the chiropractic profession has been at the leading edge of that, and really done a great job of understanding. And I try to incorporate a lot of what I've learned into a book that I spent 4 years writing, 8 years in development, to try and put it all together, and understanding the fact that all you need is an alkalizing, anti-inflammatory, antioxidant-rich nutritional approach, and we create a much healthier terrain in the mouth. And the greatest discovery that I had, I spent 20 years researching the oral microbiome.
I see this sort of picture forming. You have this unique perch, and as a dentist, especially a biologic dentist, because you're understanding fluoride and the implications of fluoride in a toxic way, and also the political suspect circumstances around fluoride, but also looking at mercury in fillings, right? And saying, so from where you're looking at oral health and its relationship to the body holistically, you're looking at two principal toxic things that are introduced into human beings, from the purview of a dentist who recognizes, it's not just about teeth, it's about the whole body and how it responds to your oral health.
Exactly.
And so what do we see that are the common denominators here? You've got very toxic substances that are being profited by from big companies who literally share little to no liability. And the thing about fluoride, which is even more disgusting, it's kind of like you said, a toxic byproduct. And rather than saying we have to figure out how to discard this and pay to discard it, it should cost them money to properly discard it, they're getting paid for the stuff. And now the taxpayers are being damaged by it, paying for it. I mean, it's
how
a real
convenient.
Yeah, but I mean,
how convenient that they found a way to dump this stuff. And I want to tell you one thing.
Yeah.
I really wish fluoride was good for you.
Yeah.
I really wished fluoride worked. I mean, I'm in the business of helping people get healthier in their mouth.
Yeah.
But science is emerging right now that is revolutionizing. It's a Copernican revolution. And it has to do with a complete new understanding of the human body.
Right.
That we're made of microbes.
Yeah.
And understanding that the bacteria in your mouth, actually, if your mouth is healthy, the bacteria in your mouth, in the oral microbiome, takes ionic calcium and phosphorus and remineralizes your teeth. You don't need fluoride. Wow. We do not need this. But I do, when I started discovering more and more and I became conscious to what was happening, I really was angry.
How much momentum is there behind this new understanding that you're talking about relative to all this?
You know, it's huge. I mean, there are now the greatest amount, even companies like Google are putting millions and millions of dollars into studying the human ecosystem.
Monsanto, glyphosate, Roundup, which is, this whole thing about GMOs and the implications, not just the GMOs themselves, but, the products that are sprayed onto the plants that are GMO plants, et cetera. How does this affect what you're talking about as far as the microbiome, the oral microbiome, et cetera?
Yeah, what's interesting about Roundup is, and glyphosate is its global effect on the human body. It's not just your gut, but it's affecting tight junctions between cells and in the mouth. By the way, I should mention that gum disease is epidemic. It's over 80%, and in some cases, Americans over the age of 35, it approaches 85% of Americans have some stage of periodontal disease, gum disease. What does that mean? Gum disease is one of the body's #1 sources of chronic low-grade inflammation. And that inflammation has been linked to everything from Alzheimer's disease to colorectal cancer.
Wow.
Glyphosate, what's insidious about it, and there are analogies to other products in the mouth as well that are the glyphosate partners, like the use of powerful antimicrobials in oral care products, like triclosan copolymer. Triclosan was banned by the FDA. It's a known pesticide. It's non-biodegradable. It has lowered the ability for antibiotics to work, so it's increased antibiotic resistance overall. And we have, of course, triclosan-resistant bacteria in the mouth that have been identified now. So what's interesting about these chemicals is that many of them, we haven't looked at the long-term safety data. And I found, even the emergence of, I call it the methadone of the sugar industry. So like, sugar, Eric Clapton said, sugar was more addictive than heroin and cocaine. And he said, he was addicted to sugar as a kid. And so the sugar industry, we live in a sugar-addicted society right now. I remember as a kid, you saw, Christmas candy and Easter, or Halloween, Christmas. Now you have like every, July 4th, and you have, pharmacies that have 2 whole aisles, devoted to sugar products,
Right.
Candy and all that. So we come up with what I call the methadone to the sugar, and now we have the sugar alcohols, xylitol, erythritol. Xylitol to me is another insidious Roundup-like product that has been embraced by many natural practitioners, thinking that it's a safe alternative to sugar and it doesn't spike insulin. There's a lot of controversy about that right now. But the thing about xylitol is it is a high-value chemical. 80% of it is made from GMO corn cobs, okay, not pretty little birch bark.
Right.
Okay, so even the pretty little birch bark, it goes through a process of hydrogenation, and the catalyst is a very toxic rainy nickel, so a carcinogen. That's the catalyst for xylitol to go through this, and a lot of it is controlled by DuPont under its subsidiary known as Danica, and they dump a lot of xylitol out there. And they preach that it's made from sugar. The xylan, bark, and xylan is a fiber. It's actually not a bad fiber, but it goes through this industrialization, this catalyzation, hydrogenation, and then what you're left with is something called a high-value chemical. Xylitol is not absorbed nor metabolized by the human body, so it creates a lot of gastric issues with gas and flatulence, and I remember they delivered a whole bunch of xylitol gum to my dental office, and my staff and everybody, we started chewing this gum. The next thing you know, we were getting abdominal cramps and a lot of flatulence. It sounded like if you ever saw the movie by Mel Brooks, Blazing Saddles.
Oh,
with
yeah,
the
yeah,
Red
the
Fire.
campfire scene.
The campfire scene.
But this is a sign that your GI tract is rebelling against what's just been
Exactly.
put in it,
It's
right?
not absorbed. So it's very disturbing to the oral microbiome, which they were preaching as a good thing, right? You have to kill plaque and disturb plaque, and plaque is an unhealthy expression of the natural human oral microbiome. It's just out of balance. So it's really about restoring homeostasis.
Yeah.
It's not about nuking everything. This scorched earth policy, kill germs on contact, kill germs 24 hours a day. So we started using high alcohol content mouthwashes that Listerine had, and then it was linked to oral cancer, and they changed the formula and tried to get the alcohol down and all that. So I remember this is back in the 80s. They had a study, Listerine linked to oral cancer, and it was a bombshell for a major U.S. brand. And then we had companies putting triclosan, chlorhexidine, all these different things to kill germs. Little did we know these germs keep us alive. Now we know we may be made of these germs.
Yeah, we don't have a war. It's a war on ourselves, basically,
Yeah.
the war on germs.
The biggest aha moment I had as a dentist was when I discovered that the same bacteria that cause tooth decay and gum disease, Streptococcus mutans bacteria, Porphyromonas gingivalis bacteria, that live in the mouth, basically, when they are in a balanced state, balanced terrain, they're benign and sometimes even beneficial. So these bacteria that cause these problems are resident bacteria that are really pissed off. That's what a pathogen is. It's a resident bacteria that is really upset because it's been disturbed. We try to kill it. And so we've been on this approach in dentistry to sterilize the mouth, the bacteria, kill bacteria. And really, if we were able to do that, it would have unleashed ecological Armageddon, because these bacteria keep us alive and protect us from deadly viruses and pathogens in the world around us.
Now, when you said that with glyphosate, it causes gaps in cells. So
Yeah, what we call tight junctions.
yeah, so the junctions are loosened.
Yes,
So what's the effect of all that?
that's a great question. Increased permeability, pathogens able to get into the circulatory system, more inflammation, lower absorption of nutrients, and the inability to absorb nutrients. Cells need to have tight junctions. It's what makes them function together as a community. And this is what's disturbed and destroyed. It's almost like creating lots of holes, in a fabric, and it loosens the fabric, and that fabric can literally fall apart. And so we see this epidemic of periodontal disease, epidemic of all kinds of problems in the gut, celiac disease, gluten intolerance, and all of these really serious debilitating problems, Crohn's disease, colitis, all of these issues that they were like under this, I love the umbrella of autoimmune. Oh, it's autoimmune disease, like it just kind of flew in from space. And yet we don't look at this toxic foundation that's all around us.
Interesting, because the autoimmune disease is the body not properly recognizing itself,
Exactly.
right? And so what would be the roots of that? And I think we're
Exactly.
starting to discover them in this whole conversation here. So you took 10 years to write a book. What's the name of it?
It's the mouth-body connection. And the mouth-body connection is so powerful because I look at the mouth as a mirror for what's going on in the body. I mean, I've diagnosed leukemia, diabetes. I mean, you name it, there's everything from HIV, AIDS. There's estimates of 85% to 90% of diseases have some sort of manifestation in the mouth. So we can look at the mouth, and the Chinese did this a long time ago because the tongue is such an amazing diagnostic organ. And so they would look at your tongue, and we could see things like vitamin deficiencies and all kinds of other systemic issues that just from the surface of the tongue. There has been a connection in Chinese medicine of each tooth in your mouth, and it's meridian. So women that have had maxillary molar root canals, that have developed cavitations, and that's a big topic, a very big topic. I was taught when you do a root canal, it fixes it and it's okay. The tooth doesn't hurt. It's still in the head. That must mean it's working. And now we know from CAT scans and cone beam evaluations that we see these lesions. So what is a cavitation? It's a hole in the bone, just like a cavity is a hole in a tooth.
Right.
So we see these things happening, and so many dentists are unconscious because they didn't learn it in dental school.
Well, again, it's the difference between a technician, I'd say, right? Which is, drill, fill, bill. Right? Yeah, right? So you're a technician, you're just grinding that out all day as compared to looking at the whole human being. I remember I interviewed Dr. Bernie Siegel once, the famous cancer surgeon, and I was at his house in Connecticut, and he said to me, when he used to do the entrance interviews for medical school, that the most common answer when you asked on the application, the written application, why do you want to become a medical doctor? The most common answer, I've always had an interest in the human body. So when he would meet with them face to interview them, when he got that answer, he would respond to them, well, you better remember a person comes inside. Right?
Didn't Bernie write the book, Love, Medicine, and Miracles?
Yes, he did. Yeah.
I love that book.
Yeah.
Because it just really helped you understand that you're treating a person.
That's right.
You're treating a living being, a spirit's inhabiting that body.
Right.
And but the book was something that I recognized that the mouth is a mirror and a gateway.
Yep.
So you had this bidirectional, which is why I have a two-directional arrow between mouth and body.
Right.
So, we have everything from Alzheimer's disease, right, to colorectal cancer, diabetes, pregnancy complications, heart issues, stroke, all correlated to what's going on in the mouth.
And we take it a step further and recognize that what's going on in the mouth is affected by mercury fillings, it's affected by glyphosate, right? So it's affected by all these things.
Fluoride.
And fluoride, in a big way. So now, and we start to see all these relationships start to build up. One that I think a lot of people really struggle with, and again, the interventions, create all kinds of havoc, is GERD, right?
Yes.
So what's happening is that a lot of people start to experience this heartburn. They want to eat certain foods, etc. But does the things we're talking about, glyphosate, fluoride, etc., does that somehow disrupt things that might create GERD or
really
heartburn? As
created a multi-billion-dollar market for antacids and Protonix, and Zantac and Prilosec and all. I mean, you look at that, and that's really treating the symptom and not the cause. So we live in this society where we can constantly are looking at symptoms and not the cause, and that's what I appreciate so much about what you do and these types of programs in helping people say, wait a minute, let's not look at what's on the surface, let's look at what's underneath. And that, you're absolutely right.
Because ripple effects, right? Because taking those drugs further interfere with the body's ability to process food properly, digest food properly.
Absolutely.
So there's this kind of like perfect storm that starts to form with all these things, and it seems like that. To me, it's bizarre that that these professions, with very intelligent people to be able to enter the profession, get educated, et cetera, that they're almost like in a trance related to all this, and they dumb it down in their own minds as compared to ask questions.
Exactly.
And this is what I think is brilliant about your work and about your book, is that you've been asking really important questions. You've been kind of attacking these sacred cows, saying that, let's not just be hypnotized here, and that there's supportive literature. It's not even just deductive, saying logically makes sense this way. But I'm looking at some inductive research that shows that we're doing things that are counterproductive to our intentions.
Yeah. Another thing about the book was I wanted to write this for the guy who might be on the drive-through at a fast food place.
Right.
And I didn't want it to be one of these up in the clouds. There are a lot of wellness-oriented people that we have a very, very interesting. It used to be 25%, we called them cultural creatives. They're the granola crunching, read the label, and now it's approaching 60%. So we're getting over that mark, but we have a large swath of people that are misfed information that helps them believe they're doing something wellness-minded, when in actually it's like the word natural, natural, yeah. Arsenic is natural, everyone. Lots of natural sources of arsenic. And fluoride, by the way. Sodium fluoride, fluorspar is a natural, there's a lot of it in Texas. But at any rate, I wanted to get the guy off the drive-through and just make an easily understandable book for him to say, aha, I can make some simple changes. I can make some simple choices. And this guy makes sense.
Yeah.
That wellness, I like to say oral health is the 800-pound gorilla in the wellness room.
Right.
And so we can make some simple choices and changes and wake up. It's about getting people to wake up.
One other thing that I'm sure you've thought about quite a bit is, of course, we got the guy, at the drive-through as you describe him, but the mother who's trying to raise healthy kids.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
I mean, because that's the mother is really the one who's taking control of the health of the household in many respects, or most respects. And I'm sure it's collaboration between parents, what have you. But ultimately, can you imagine the dilemma of the mother, who doesn't have our backgrounds, doesn't, that person's life, who's probably a working mother, is spent, having to provide for family, take care of the family, et cetera. But you're starting to catch whiffs of, you need to question vaccines.
Yeah.
You need to question GMOs. You need to question.
It takes courage.
All fluoride. You need to understand that you don't want to have Roundup in your kid's diet, et cetera.
Exactly.
And now you start to put together and say, what's the low-hanging fruit that I can make some changes in the household that are within my bandwidth to be able to take proper care of my family and raise my kids in a more healthy way. So I have to imagine what you're discussing in that book is good for that person.
Absolutely. Even what you use, parents have come to me, very quick story. Mid-'80s, late 80s, one of the major toothpaste manufacturers came out with a product called Sparkle toothpaste.
I remember that.
It was bubblegum flavored, fluorescent blue, and it had sparkles in it. Fluoride fatalities in children went up 280%.
Wow.
Now that was before the internet, so we didn't hear a lot about that, and there was a lot of damage control there. But it mandated, the FDA created a mandate to put a poison warning on toothpaste that had sodium fluoride. There's enough sodium fluoride, what their dentist says their kids need, to kill 2 children under 5, generally in a full-size tube. So a full-size tube of toothpaste has enough sodium fluoride that is fatal if ingested.
Wow.
As a result, there's now a poison warning that says, warning, children under 6 years of age should be supervised. Use only a pea-sized amount, a small amount. I mean, it's a speck. They used to put the big ribbon of toothpaste. Now you use a speck. A pea-sized amount. If is swallowed, call a poison control center immediately.
Wow, right in toothpaste that you're buying off the store.
So I had parents coming to me like, "What's this? What's this toothpaste? Why does it have a poison warning?" I said, "Because poison's in there."
Yeah, and how many people are reading it, though?
People are reading it. They don't know what to do. So I spent 20 years developing a natural formulation called Revitin that kids can swallow the whole tube, and it's a dietary supplement. Basically, it's edible. Right. So it's prebiotic. It has xanthan gum and things like that are prebiotics. Vitamin C, CoQ10, vitamin E, methylsulfonylmethane, a powerful connective tissue nutrient. And it's a product designed to foster a balancing of the natural environment of the mouth. And what happens when you balance the bacteria in the mouth is fascinating. You wake up in the morning and your mouth feels clean. Why? Because when it's out of balance, you get that thick, sticky, smelly film on your teeth, which dentists and dental hygienists have called plaque. Right. Plaque is an unhealthy expression of the natural oral microbiome. But when it's in balance, you wake up in the morning, it's a thin, odorless film that's protecting you. It's helping your teeth remineralize. It's helping your gums stay healthy. And that's just a simple thing of just changing what you use for your kids' toothpaste. And I was so frustrated because so many natural toothpaste, Tom's of Maine, which is now owned by Colgate, it basically is a natural detergent. So toothpaste was invented by soap makers 100 years ago. Right. It was natural soap for your mouth, right? You wash your hands, you shampoo your hair, you wash your clothes. You got to wash your mouth out. So toothpaste was very, very interesting, the origins of that and why we were using it. I saw that in the 1970s, I found a Japanese researcher who biopsied diseased gums and found that there were 2 antioxidants necessary for proper cell function that he found that were deficient in diseased gums. Vitamin C and coenzyme Q10, which wasn't really a vitamin, it's a cofactor in the Krebs cycle to create ATP so the cells could stay puffed up and not be all like soggy and flabby. So the more ATP that's needed, the more CoQ10 needs to be manufactured by the body, which the body slows down in. So heart, skin, gums, important CoQ10. So those were the 2 actives that I patented in this dental formulation that I was working on. And my wife got me to do this because her gums used to bleed. And we tried everything. She could see the dental hygienist all the time. This is 20 years ago, and I came up with this formulation. She started using it. Her gums stopped bleeding in 2 days. And that became an exciting advance, that toothpaste could be a nutritional product. And you don't need xylitol. Coconut oil pulling, that's a great thing, but it's a detergent process to get unhealthy plaque out from before teeth. So if you keep doing coconut oil pulling, you go from a hypertrophic biofilm, this thick, sticky, smelly stuff all over your teeth, to a desert. And really you want to be in the middle of the target. You don't want a scary, thick, smelly jungle, nor do you want a desert. You want to be right in the middle with that beautiful, robust garden.
I personally have a special appreciation for maverick thinkers, people who are not hypnotized by convention. Matter of fact, for my company, the #1 core value is tearing at the fabric of convention. But I also know that it comes at a price as far as the adversity that must be faced, which of course history is replete, right, with the people who do this. And I see you as one of these people who have really, through passion and purpose, have been able to think differently and bring ideas to the world that you can get criticized for rather than thanked. But so I want to say, for the people who can witness this and appreciate it, thank you for the work that you have done and are doing in your career, and thank you for sharing it with this audience.
Well, thank you for those kind words, Patrick. And you know, it's interesting. We have to have courage to stand up. I had my first run-in with the problems of the toxicities of fluoridation back about 15, 20 years ago. I started speaking about these toxicities. It was in a health magazine in my community, and another dentist went to the Dental Society and said that I was preaching unconventional dentistry. And the Dental Society sent a letter to all the dentists, basically labeling me with like the scarlet letter, that Dr. Curatola is promoting unethical dentistry, so if your patients ask about it, it's unethical. And not only, you know, it cost me thousands of dollars with an attorney, but they issued a retraction and an apology. And from that moment on, I was not going to back down, because I think most doctors have their hearts in the right place. But the word that you used, and the words that you used about being hypnotized and complacent, and to convention, hypnotized to conventional thinking, is very, very dangerous, because I believe we're running out of time here. I mean, we have disease like we've never seen before. And I talk about how, and seeing my patients sick, and cancer rates, and death at a young age, and childhood problems that never should exist. So we're seeing staying healthy today is like walking in a toxic minefield. You know, it's like stepping around mines, and too many people are stepping on the mines. So thank you for your kind words. I'm just so happy to be here with you, and I appreciate all the work that you're doing as well.
Thank you. So great to be with you.